There we are.
Hey,
Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Natasha.
I'm Karen.
I'm Brianna.
I'm Todd.
Yay! We did it. So this week we are interviewing Todd Jagger from
Jagger.
Jagger?
Yeah, just like Mick.
Right on. I was thinking that it was Jagger, and then I was like, he spells it like Mick Jagger, though. And he is with the organization Wolf-PAC, spelled PAC, as many of you may be familiar with the terminology. And their goal is to create an amendment to get money out of the democratic process.
But why? America's all about money.
Oh, boy.
Corrupting money.
Oh.
So, can you tell us where the concerns are stemming from? What kind of examples do you have of the corrupting of our process and how that has been happening and what that looks like?
Sure, absolutely. Obviously, this has been a long time coming. You know, this country has always been very corporate centric, and the moneyed interest since the founding of the country have obviously been a part of our political process. But what we've seen over the last probably 4 decades is a systematic erosion of the campaign finance laws, which have really created a funnel for all kinds of special interest money and influences from all, even foreign interests, to work their way into our political process, primarily through like I say, the erosion of our campaign finance laws. And, you know, most people think of Citizens United as kind of the bellwether, but by the time Citizens United and more recently McCutcheon happened, there was already problems in our world of campaign finance. Some of the decisions, like back in the 70s, Bellotti and, gosh, I can't remember the other one, Bellotti versus, I can't remember them right now. Good grief, I don't have notes. But it's been a trajectory, obviously, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And in fact, one of the things that your call centers can do, you know, right now when they're trying to renegotiate the budget, they're relaxing the Johnson Amendment, which is what keeps churches from donating into our political system as well. But so, I mean, as far as examples, I mean, you don't really have to go far. Once you start peeling back the layers of pretty much any issue in this country, it all comes down to what moneyed interests are behind something or what moneyed interests are against something. And actually, I came to this probably about a dozen years or so ago. I live in a border county in Texas, out in far west Texas, and I started seeing, you know, just a lot of things that I was like, well, why is this problem? You know, like, for example, the militarization of our border, and of course the war on drugs, that kind of stuff. And you start looking under the hood a little bit and you see, well, there's a lot of people on both sides, not just the criminals, but a lot of people making a lot of money on having all this stuff broken and keeping it broken. And primarily it's in the form of contracts. And the more they privatize stuff, the worse the problem gets, because these companies have a vested interest in maintaining these contracts that they get for whatever it is, whether it's, you know, prescription drugs, you know, military equipment, badges, uniforms, anything.
Private prisons.
Yeah, private prison. Obviously, yes, it's horrible. So once you realize that it's the money, Lebowski, then okay, what do you do with it? Then so it becomes, you know, campaign finance reform, and it's really where it all gets back, and it's the root cause to actually fixing any of the problems that we have in this country. Obviously, there's a ton of them. You know, I mean, like lately, the NRA, you know, is a case in point of that, the, health insurance, anything that we are wanting to fix. And it doesn't matter whether it's a progressive cause or a conservative cause. I mean, conservative, I'm pretty conservative, and I would like our government money to be spent wisely. I don't think that we need to be spending $31,000 on a dining room set for Mr. Carson. I don't, and I don't care whether that would be Mr. Biden or Mr. Carson. It doesn't matter. So, we have to get our fiscal house in order, and this is really important ways to do it. So once I started seeing about the issues of campaign finance, money in politics, corrupting money in politics, I started looking for what can we do about it. And I started reading Lawrence Lessig's books and following him, and got a little bit involved with his organization, but they weren't really there wasn't a whole lot that they were actually doing as far as taking action. And of course, I talked to my congressmen, I talked to my state legislators, but they're like, yeah, that's all very nice. Thank you very much. And, because I mean, literally they have, they're not going to do anything about it because they've literally risen to where they are by knowing how to game the system that they're in. Right. So
exactly. If this is the system that made you, why would you want to dismantle it?
Right. Yeah. So, and it was interesting about, I guess it was probably around 2007, 2008, my son said that I would probably like to listen to Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. And so I started listening to the Young Turks, really liked the way that they cover news. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Cenk says, but I do think that he's sincere and obviously it's got a progressive bent to it. But I think that they even, if you take it almost like in a jar, any story, you would almost be hard pressed in some of the stories to know whether he's coming at it from a conservative angle or a progressive angle, because it's really just good analysis. And then when he started Wolf-PAC back in, and I'll tell you a little story about that in just a second. When he started Wolf-PAC in 2011 or 2012, I signed up for it and been doing it ever since. So if you don't mind me just kind of continuing on, let me just tell you the backstory of Wolf-PAC a little bit.
Yes, please.
Okay. So Cenk, he was getting really frustrated by telling his viewers, here's these problems. And he definitely connected it with money influencing all the things, because he said it was like the Rosetta Stone, that it wasn't that he was particularly smart about any issues. It's just that you can look, oh, well, this vested interest is driving this issue, and this one, doesn't have as much money, and, yada, yada, yada. So he said, he just was getting really tired of telling people that there was nothing they can do. And so he put up his mind to it to see if there was something that people could do. And he literally spent about 3 years researching the issue. He's an attorney, by the way, researching the issue, talking to people like Lawrence Lessig and, what's the Sarbanes? There's somebody else in Maryland, Jamie Raskin, talking to these people that are constitutional scholars. How do we fix this? And he came to the conclusion, kind of an obvious conclusion, that, and especially after the Citizens United decision happened in 2010, that it has to be an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Obviously, the legislation is the mechanics by which you implement a desire, but without an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, nothing can be protected. The legislation can't be protected. And there's no better example of that than after the Citizens United decision, Montana, who, like Texas, actually had over a century of fairly reasonable campaign finance laws, like corporations couldn't put money into our elections, out-of-state influences couldn't put money in our elections. There was a window by which they could raise funds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when Citizens United came in, that obliterated, it really gutted a lot of these state-level campaign finance laws. And Montana took that all the way to the Supreme Court because they said, look, we want to be in control of our own elections. Montana, unlike a lot of states, has a very rich history of mining companies basically owning their legislators and congressmen. So they wanted to keep it in their own laws in the states, and the Supreme Court shot it down. They wouldn't hear that. They wouldn't hear the case. So that is a real case in point why it has to be an amendment, because that's the only thing that goes above these Supreme Court decisions. And once you come to that conclusion, then, okay, how do you get an amendment? Well, it's pretty clear in the Constitution. Article 5, which is the article that deals with amending the Constitution, is only a few sentences long. And it's either Congress can propose an amendment or the states can propose an amendment through a convention. Well, again, like we just said, Congress isn't going to do it. They have no interest. There have been multiple amendments written and presented and filed in Congress. There's one there right now. They're just not going to go anywhere. So, okay, then if you do it through the states, how does that happen? And that's the goal of Wolf-PAC, is working on a state-by-state basis locally in the states to influence our legislators to make the case that we should have this convention to discuss how we can make our elections work better for the average person. And one thing to realize is that no matter whether Congress proposes an amendment or the states propose an amendment through a convention, after that, it's just who writes the amendment. After that, it goes through the same high ratification process of 3/4 of the states, 75%, must finalize. So one of the things that's kind of cool on the state level is that when you're talking to the state legislators and they say, well, we can cover this convention, but what if they come up with something that we don't like, and say, well, you're going to get another shot at it. You don't have to ratify it. So, and they appreciate that. And one of the great things about Wolf-PAC also is that at the state level, what we found is you really have much greater influence than you do in Congress, and just again, I'll let you ask me a question, but when I first started with this, there weren't that many people doing this. We were just getting started, and I talked to Mike Mineta, who's now our national director. So what do I do? I didn't have any political experience whatsoever. I'm a musician and a photographer. And he said, well, just start, calling the legislators and see if anybody will file this thing. And so I started calling Texas legislators, and I got through the B's and I got to the end of the B's, and a gentleman named Lon Burnham, a Democrat from the Dallas area, he returned my call. Most of them didn't, but he returned my call and said, this is interesting to me. I'd like to discuss it with you. And I'm going to be in Austin for a fundraiser. And why don't you come down and we'll go have a drink or something after the thing. And I said, okay.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, it is. And so I go downtown and I meet him. He introduces me to several legislators there, and then he takes me to the bar and buys me a beer. And we're sitting there, and it was kind of funny. He started talking about Austin, and I grew up in Austin and lived there most of my life, and et cetera, and told him the band that I played with, which is called the Austin Lounge Lizards. And he's like, I love that band. I love that. And so I was like, okay, well, cool. And so finally, after about 20 minutes of just shooting the bull, he says, okay, so Todd, yeah, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm here about Wolf-PAC. I said, oh, yeah, that's right. Well, look, Todd, I just think, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm a big supporter of environmental causes, but I just don't think that a bill to save the wolves here in Texas is going to go anywhere. And I'm like, there was this, how like your brain kind of slows down, and I'm like,
oh God.
I'm like, okay, what do I do with this?
Oh God.
And I said, no, this is about campaign finance reform, and dealing with the ramifications of these Supreme Court decisions like Citizens United, yada yada. And he goes, oh, I'm all in on that. he said, I've been looking. He literally said, a lot of I and my colleagues, both on both sides of the aisle, have been wanting to figure out a way to get at these decisions, and this sounds like the perfect way to do it. And he said, I will file this, and I want you to know that when I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And little did I know, because he was the first legislator that I'd ever talked to. And little did I know how important those last words that he said to me were. And so, sure enough, from that conversation, he filed the very first resolution in the history of the United States to call for a convention to propose an amendment to get our elections working for the average citizens again. And that was, to me, I get goosebumps just remembering that, And since then, it was a tough one. Little did I know when I talked to Mr. Burnham that he was mathematically the most liberal member of the Texas legislature. But he filed it, and we got filed. In fact, we didn't even have the legislation written when he agreed to do it. But that was proof of concept. Jen called me that evening and said, what the hell just happened? Because we were the first state to file it in Texas. And so that proved that somebody would file this in a very red state, even if it was a very, liberal Democrat. And so we only meet once every 2 years. And since then, we learned our lesson about that. We went back, and Lon is a great guy. Even though he was super liberal, he was very consistent with his positions. And even the people on the other side of the aisle, they may not have liked his positions, but they respected the fact that he was always consistent, kind of a Bernie guy. Yep. And, but the next session, we were the first state to have a Republican introduce it for us. And this last session, and we had a really great hearing. We were one vote shy of getting it out of committee. Last session, I think we were the first state to have both a Democrat and Republican joint author the resolution. So we're working towards 2019. We only meet every 2 years in Texas.
Yep.
That was a long monologue.
That was absolutely inspirational. It sounds like so much fun.
It is a lot of fun.
Now I want to sit down with my legislator and have a drink.
You should. Absolutely. Working at this has in so many ways opened my eyes to the fact that there are really good people in our state legislatures on some of them, I may not agree with their policies, but they're sincere and they really want to do good things for their people. And that's the deal, is when they're at that level of politics, they haven't been run through the meat grinder yet.
Right. And it's not so much for glory as it is for service.
Right.
Mostly for most people. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I've talked to a lot of them now. Yeah.
And so, and I will say that, it really has made me a lot more appreciative of the people in our state legislatures, especially on the representatives, where you have a lot more and the districts are a lot smaller. And, a lot of them, I'll see them in the hallways and they'll come up and slap me on the back and say, Wolf-PAC, and so, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
So has it passed in any states?
Yes, absolutely. It's we've passed in 5 states thus far. That would be, the first state was Vermont. No surprise there. The second state was, believe it or not, California. And so, and then the third state was Illinois. And then we passed in New Jersey and Rhode Island. We are live. We have resolutions in about, I want to say, some of them are technically still live, but because of the way the legislative calendars work, and every state is different, and there's all kinds of deadlines, and if it's not done this by this time, yada yada yada. So some of them are still functionally live, but not viable right now. But there are a number of states that we are making really good progress in. One of them is Hawaii, believe it or not. And then Maryland, we just passed the House, the chamber in the House in Maryland last week, and we should be coming up for a Senate vote probably within a couple of weeks. And one of the cool things about this particular brand of legislation is that in most states, not all, but in most states, once it passes both chambers, it's done. The governor does not sign it.
Right. It's a Secretary of State thing.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, like I said, in Texas, that to me, that's like a third of a victory right there,
Right.
So, although Governor Abbott was very, very adamant about the other convention, the more conservative angle one that the other groups are trying to do, he was pushing that last session. So Maryland, Hawaii, Missouri, we're actually, we have live bills there. There's companion bills in both the House and the Senate. On the House side, it's a Republican that introduced. On the Senate side, it's a Democrat that introduced. Nebraska, with their unicameral legislation, we have. I can't remember whether they don't have labels in Nebraska.
Right.
It's kind of cool. They're unicameral, but they don't necessarily. They're all quote independents.
Right.
And so I actually don't know. I think it's a Republican, but I'm not sure.
Probably statistically likely.
Right. And so, we have a bill there, and I know there's some other bills that are, like the filing dates actually haven't come around yet, but we have bills pre-filed, commitments to pre-file. Like Georgia, we have a commitment to pre-file, but the date hasn't rolled around yet.
Right.
And a lot of states they alternate short sessions with longer sessions,
and we're in short session year.
Right. So it's complicated. Luckily,
it is, but that's exciting how much progress you've made. So what's the situation in Colorado where Brianna and I can help?
We have a really excellent team in Colorado, and I'm almost I think actually the problem in Colorado, and I have few filters, okay, so I'm just going to talk, but I think the problem is leadership in Colorado. I think that one of the persons up there that could move it forward is against the convention. And that'll
be a stopper.
Yeah. Which, I noticed in the newsletter that you posted a link to one of the articles that Allison wrote about this. There are 2 articles on Medium that talk about why the convention is the way to go, and why it is the fear-mongering around the convention is literally just an incorrect tactic that's been employed by both the left and the right for decades, really. I mean, it started back with the John Birch Society, and none of y'all are old enough to know who the John Birch Society is.
Oh, yes, we are.
But the John Birch Society started this back when there was somebody a socialist proposed rewriting the entire U.S. Constitution and substituting it with a socialist communist constitution. And he wanted to use the Article 5 process to do it. And so the John Birch Society jumped all over that. And then in the 70s, when it came back up again, the left actually started fear-mongering on it because there were some states that were trying to use the Article 5 process to deal with the civil rights issues. That if you look through the calls for all the conventions, there's a pretty good webpage. I think Wikipedia even has that. But if you look through them and you see all these ones that were done like in Mississippi and Alabama back in the late 60s, early 70s about quote unquote school choice, that's what that was about.
Right. Resegregating, if you will.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
all right. So how do our other, how does anyone listening get involved?
Okay. The way you listen, I mean, what Wolf-PAC really is literally all about is creating that individual relationship with your own state legislators. You can do that. What we've heard all across the country is on the state level that it only takes about 3 calls on a specific issue to get their attention, to say, oh, people are calling about this. And it only takes about 10 calls or meetings or, maybe not emails, but, quality contacts to get them to consider supporting it. So, what that tells us is that there's a number, we don't know what that number is. They don't know what that number is, but every legislator, there's a number of contacts from constituents that says, you know what, I need to take this seriously. This is something my people want, and I'm going to support this. And so it's all
We
about...
actually interviewed a state legislative aide last year, and they told us around 7 calls will move the needle. So that agrees well with what you were saying.
Right. And yeah, absolutely. So what we ask people to do is initially, you don't have to know anything about the product. A lot of people are hesitant because they feel like they don't know enough to have an intelligent conversation. But really, you don't need to. You all you have to do is call that office, whoever, and y'all have done this a gazillion times. So you know that whoever answers the phone is going to be super nice because that's their job. And they're gonna, listen to what you say and log it. And really all we ask people to do at this point is just like call your state senator, call your state representative and say, hi, my name is so-and-so. I live, in this town. I'm one of your constituents. Have y'all heard of the free and fair elections resolution? And they will probably say no and say, well, this is something to deal with campaign finance reform to get our elections working for the average citizens again. And I would very much like you to support this resolution, or if it's not filed already, to file it in the upcoming session. And okay, thank you very much, yada, yada. And if, beyond that, I would absolutely, we tell everybody, try to make an appointment with your representative. More than likely, their district office is going to be within a couple of miles of where you live. And even if they, some of them, like a lot of the Republicans here in Texas, don't even have offices. They say, you know what, I don't want to spend money on that. I'll meet you at a Starbucks. And so they'll go, and, and I appreciate that, being fiscally responsible, and so they'll meet you, maybe they'll buy you a cup of coffee, but and just have a talk with them. And we have lots of resources to get more educated about it, but really it's just why this matters to you, and almost every one of us has a story about why this matters to us and why this, because, not just like school finance, kids, it's just, it gets back to everything. So no matter what issue you care about and what issue, even perhaps more importantly, they care about, it all gets back to that.
Absolutely. So it's easy to think about what you care about the most and tie that to money and then make a plea.
Right, exactly.
Excellent. So I've been monopolizing. Brianna, did you have any questions from all the things you're reading today?
No, I just feel like I'm learning over here.
Are you excited? Are you ready to call your senator?
Yeah.
Me too. So Natasha is in Texas. If she calls her senator, will anyone answer?
Yeah.
All right.
You mean like a state senator?
Yeah, right now. Are they around? Will they take a call?
If they're not in session.
Their staff will be.
Their staff's there?
Yeah, the Senate almost always has staff. Absolutely.
All right.
Cool.
If I could, I know most of these people. I could probably tell you who is your state senator?
Craig Estes.
Okay. Craig is not returning.
He's trying to become a judge, right, or something?
He just lost his primary.
Oh, did he? Oh,
yeah.
Well, that no point calling Craig. Cross him off.
Interestingly, he is also one of the staunchest anti-Article 5 senators. He was literally trying to hold up the conservative one in the Senate side, and I think Governor Abbott reached out to him, and that may be one reason why he lost his primary.
Huh.
Well, then maybe you should look up your representative, Natasha.
Yeah, who's your representative?
Let's see. Larry Phillips.
Larry Phillips.
All right, you think that over. I am calling right now.
I think
No,
it's
I'm
Larry
not.
Phillips that I was thinking of because he's running to be a judge.
Oh, so you don't have anyone. Your people aren't coming back.
So they're neither of them are coming back.
A guy named, I want to say, the guy, actually, you could call Pat Fallon's office. I'm almost positive he's the guy. He's a representative, and I'm pretty sure he's the fellow that beat Craig Estes in the primary, and he's probably unopposed.
Good. Write that down, Natasha.
Pat Fallon?
Yeah.
I'm calling.
Hello, this is Guzman's office. This is Darren. May I help you?
Darren, this is Karen. I am calling about an issue. Ha-ha! So great to talk to you.
I haven't heard from you in a while.
I know, and I am sorry.
That's okay.
But I have something I care about.
Well, good.
And it is the corrupting influence of money in politics.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, have you heard about the Article 5 Constitution to propose an amendment to restore free and fair elections in America? Are you guys on to that?
I have heard about that.
Oh.
And the concerns that we have are whether or not you can actually get a limited constitutional convention.
Ah, fair enough. So, you want to make sure it's only about that and it doesn't get out of control.
Right.
All right.
That's exactly it. That's our biggest concern.
I feel like that's fair. I am going to research that and I'm going to call you back and then we can talk about it some more. Is that all right?
That's perfect.
Has anyone else called you about this?
I actually get a group called Wolf-PAC.
Yeah.
They are a lobbying type group, or grassroots lobbying group.
Yeah.
So private citizens, and they have talked to me about it for the past 2 years.
Excellent. Are they slowly convincing you?
We still have that. We argue back and forth about whether or not it can be limited. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I appreciate that you are considering it, and I would like to try to persuade you. But I do not have all my ducks in a row on that objection. So thank you, and I will call you back.
Okay, that's great, Karen.
All right.
It's good to hear from you.
It's nice to talk to you. Talk to you again soon.
Okay, you take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How about that? Could you hear that?
That was fantastic. That was absolutely fantastic. And
That was so fun.
Was that your Colorado? That was Colorado?
That was my senator. Yes.
Okay. And yeah, that's interesting. I know that the articles that you linked on the thing, those actually do have all the information about the limited convention. The shortest answer for that is the people that are saying that the convention cannot be limited are basically just using fear tactics and not legal action. They're using conspiracy theories, not legal theories. And when you get down to who actually has done substantive legal research on this, which would include the U.S. Department of Justice, the American Bar Association, and the Congressional Research Service,
Perfect.
they all say that the convention can and in fact must be limited to the calls, to the topics that are in the application for the convention.
Can you give me all right, I will look all that up. That's beautiful. All right, guys, do you guys want to make calls on air or do you want to wait? Because we've already gone way over our time.
Yeah, I'm going to look into Pat Fallon because it doesn't look like he's for District 102. And I'm not sure if I have to be in somebody's district for them to
But he's going to be your senator.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he beat Estes in the primary, and actually Fallon knows us. We've talked to him.
Great. You want to add your weight to that?
Right.
All right. Brianna, how are you feeling? Are you inspired?
Yes. So actually, I just sent you in the chat. Common Cause is a group that is kind of like supposed to be for this, but is actually against it. So you can read through like their reasoning on the limited convention and kind of like why they're against it, even though it seems like they should be for it. And then
these are the points that I can rebut, basically.
Yeah.
Very
You
nice.
got me.
Appreciate that. We're on the same wavelength. All right, guys. Well, hopefully this was informational and it gave everyone something to think about for a way they could actually help improve our country.
Yeah, it's really nice to know that local stuff makes such a difference, because it can feel so small that it's like not actually getting anywhere. But
a constitutional convention would be huge.
Yeah.
And you know,
amazing.
Let me just say real quick. I mean, you know, first off, those 2 articles that are linked in the newsletter are direct rebuttals of the Common Cause letter. So,
perfect.
So definitely check those out. And the thing is that, do I think we should have a convention to propose this amendment? Absolutely. I think that having state level people come together in this massive thing could probably propose a much better amendment than Congress will. And also, I think it's important that we can prove as a country that we're capable of using the Constitution the way our founders intended it. Do I think, well, actually, no, I don't. I think that 14 of our 27 amendments right now began with states taking these actions and ended with Congress capitulating and proposing the amendment themselves.
Right.
So,
because Congress doesn't want the states to feel their oaths.
Right. And that's the only way we can get them to do that is by putting this real pressure on them. Passing resolutions, non-binding stuff saying, pretty please, Congress, you know, will you fix yourself? That is not going to work. But this has consequences, and this they have to listen to. So do I think that we're going to have a convention? Probably not. Do I want one? Yes, I think we should have one. But history shows that what's going to happen is we're going to get close, and then Congress will capitulate due to the pressure that we put on them from the states to actually act. So,
well, I am excited to apply some of that pressure.
Good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and telling us about all of this, and your story especially, because I think that puts a nice spotlight on individuals and what we can do just one by one. So
you do matter. You absolutely, every individual matters, because your call, your visit with that state senator or legislator could be the one thing that puts him over that number, that magic number that says, yeah, I guess I need to do this. And his vote could be the one that passes it in your state. And
well, Darren said he would let me persuade him, so I'm going to do it.
There you go.
All right, everybody. Well, that's it. Thank you all so much for watching and or listening. And thank you 3 for being here and, you know, bearing with all of the usual technical difficulties.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.